In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, we are recording on a Sunday night, and James and I, we are going to share our thoughts on some prospects that played well this weekend. So this is basically James's weekend observations. Stay tuned. Shout out to every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, along with my co-host, who happens to be my brother, James. And James has some takes that he wanted to get off. He sent me a text like, hey, man, I got to get these takes off. But, of course, we're not going to, label them takes on the headline because that sounds like it's hot takes. But this is basically James's observations. He's going to share his thoughts on Tre Johnson, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, Cooper Flagg. I know he's got a lot to say about Derik Queen. And they're also going to talk about Thomas Sorber. But before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that it is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Also want to talk to you about the Locked On newsletter. Your favorite Locked On NBA podcast now has a newsletter. It will be delivered right to your inbox. So check it out at LockedOnDaily.com. So whatever NBA team you support or Locked On podcast you support, you can get a newsletter right to your inbox every morning. Check it out, LockedOnDaily.com. And like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell so you can be notified every time we drop an episode, because we are your source for NBA draft content 5 days a week. Like I mentioned, we're coming at you on a Sunday night. It's about 10 o'clock p.m. Central. I just put my son down to bed. He goes to bed late. But the reason why it was a struggle tonight is because this little dude, 2 years old, threw a tantrum because I made him take off his Dallas Mavericks onesie and sweatshirt, and he does not have Dallas Mavericks PJs. My son is like the biggest Mavs fan. I mean, it's crazy.
I know what I got to get him for Christmas then, man.
Yes, I'm going to have mom get him some. We're going to get him 5 days of Dallas Mavericks PJs. But before I put him down for his bath and got him ready for bed, I was watching the Duke game, Duke versus Louisville. We're going to talk about Cooper Flagg later. But you wanted to start off talking about Tre Johnson. Tre had a good game against UConn. Texas lost to UConn 76-65, but Tre had a good game, 24 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds, was 9 of 17 from the floor, 3 of 8 from 3. And Johnson has been, to me, somewhat of a surprise in a sense. Not that I'm not surprised that he could score, but I am somewhat surprised at the efficiency, but mostly from 3. He came into the game shooting 44% from 3 on 7 attempts per game. And I guess the knock on him coming into the season was he had a heavy diet of mid-range shots, tough shots. And I knew people knew that he could shoot, but I don't think people knew that he could shoot the ball as well as he has from 3. So what were your thoughts about Tre's game from this weekend?
Very, very impressive from a guard standpoint. The most impressive guard wing that we saw this weekend for freshman draft eligible guys, or draft guys that we think they're going to be talked about, the young ones. He took advantage of, they put their best defender, Hassan Diarra, on him, and he was backing him down, turnaround jumpers. He shoots the 3 ball in transition, individual creativity, all kind of, he's a scorer. The shots that he was making tonight, Raf, was the shots that he was making when I saw him as a sophomore lighting up teams in high school. Like, his game translates, and the most important thing that I saw from him, the most impressive thing that I saw from him, were the 4 assists. Now, these weren't just ball moving assists. Like, he got these off of he got it going, right? They were down like 20 early, and he brought them back. I think he cut the lead down Texas to about 10, but he had it going. But he found a couple guys on dump offs. He made some really good plays, and I had mentioned before the season started, I think he's a very good passer, or at least he has the potential to be a very good passer. It would just be a matter of whether or not we were going to see it. But with that said, Ralph, let's just get right to it. Why is Ace Bailey a better prospect than Tre Johnson?
I think it has to do with the height.
If it's just based on height, cool. But Tre is a more efficient scorer, right? We know he can get his own shot. Now he does need to get to the rim a lot more too himself. I think he's at a little less than 4 free throw attempts per game.
But that's 4 free throw attempts a game is good.
It's solid. I would like to see 5.
It's 3.4 to be like totally honest, but yeah, I guess there's a difference between 3.4 and 4. It may not sound like
that, yes. So I want to see it more because I do believe he has the handle to get to the basket, but I want to know why Tre Johnson isn't ahead of Ace Bailey. And I'm gonna get to Ace. Matter of fact, let me get to Ace right now. It's to make this segment work. Ace had 12 points, 7 rebounds on 6 of 16 shooting. He shot 1 3-pointer, and he is again, this is not hating on Ace. I have him at 3. I don't know if he's going to stay at 3, but he stops the ball, and he's going to hold it in that short corner, preferably the right short corner. He's going to hit you with a couple moves. He plays like Bernard King, and, some of our listeners may not know who Bernard King is, but I'm just, the more that I watch, I'm like, why is Ace Bailey a better prospect than Tre Johnson? Again, I get it. He's going to be 2 to 3 inches taller, and you're going to say, well, he rebounds better. But I know Tre Johnson can pass, is a willing passer. Ace is at like 0.8 assists per game. His assist percentage is terrible. I have questions, Rob. Why is Ace better than Tre Johnson to people?
I think it's valid. I also feel like a lot of people are just in like the NBA draft world. They're going to stick to their preseason picks or stick to their preseason big board until there's a strong or very strong reason to make changes in a sense. So Ace had a couple good games, but I will say this much. I think whether it's Ace Bailey or Tre Johnson, because of the way that they play, if they have an off shooting night, it's going to look bad. It's going to look bad. But I'll say this much about Tre. He is a better passer.
Yes.
I do think that he is a much better playmaker than he's been able to show. I mentioned before, I saw a AAU game. It was crazy because it was I guess it was like last spring or maybe the spring. I don't remember. But Tre actually played a game before Cooper Flagg. And it was a game. It wasn't like it was like one of those early tournaments in like May before like people really got into their like EYBL or Adidas schedules. But it was a weaker team that they played. And you could tell Tre was like, I'm not about to break a sweat. But the way he manipulated the defense with his passing, he scored without like forcing any shots, but he dominated this game with his passing. And that's when I realized, okay, you know what? Maybe he's a much better passer than he gets credit for. He can see the floor. He can make teammates better, but he's such a gifted scorer. I think, especially at 6'6" and as a wing, I think it's easy for his teams to kind of box him into that because that's what they need from him. But I think maybe on the NBA level, he'll get a little bit more on ball reps. But
yeah. My observation, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say I'm going to have more than likely Tre number 3 ahead of Ace Bailey, and it's not just because of last game. I just think the highs are higher for Tre Johnson than the lows. Than the highs for Ace Bailey. So like a great Ace Bailey game, that game against, I believe it was A&M. Like he was efficient, he shot the ball well, but still the playmaking is still there. And it's like when he does get to the basket, it's like great, but it doesn't happen enough. Whereas Tre, like this game here, this was a high game for him, right?
Yep.
They were down. He brought the team back, and he still was unselfish enough to make plays. Again, they ultimately didn't win because it's hard to overcome that deficit. But I just feel like he's a better basketball player, and like he has handles. He can figure it out. Like I said, I think in pick and roll he's going to be fine at the next level. Whereas Ace, like he had a play against the Ohio State the other day where he almost dribbled in a circle because he doesn't take good angles and he doesn't have the strength to gain leverage to get to his spot. Like he dribbled from the one above the break wing, and he was all the way on the other side to the outside of the paint because he couldn't turn the corner to get a layup. And like I just have concerns because his bad games are like terrible because he doesn't do anything else.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference between the two, like I said, your point is valid. I think the biggest difference between the two is the shots that Tre may take that people may think are bad shots. He's actually perfected those shots. While Ace is like, I'm in trouble. All right, I'm gonna just elevate and pull up. Also feel like Tre has done a good job of working on his body and getting stronger because he was able to like use his muscle to get to his. I mean, he's got like deep range as far as like the pull up and how he can. It's weird to say, but like his pull up range, where it's just like a rise and flick of the wrist, he's got pretty good range on that. And so I think for him, just how much he's worked on his body in the last year or so, it allows him to get better leverage to get to his sweet spots than Ace. I think with Ace, you can bump him right out of his like pull up jumper zone where he's not as efficient. Well, at least with Tre, I mean, it's easy. But up next, we're going to dig a little deeper into Tre Johnson, Ace Bailey. I think it can be a debate. We're also going to talk about Dylan Harper and Cooper Flagg. But before we get into the second segment, let's talk about Mint Mobile. And with Mint Mobile, you can say goodbye to overpriced wireless plans that have those jaw-dropping monthly bills and unexpected overages. And Mint Mobile was here to rescue you with a premium wireless plan that starts at just $15 a month. You heard that correctly, $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text, and it is delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. And with Mint Mobile, you can use your own phone. You can use your own phone. You can bring your phone number along with your existing contacts. So ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal, and you can get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. And to get this new offer with your new month premium wireless plan for just $15, all you have to do is go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. That is mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. You can cut your wireless bill down to $15 a month. Again, mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. It is $45 upfront payment required, which is $15 a month. New customers on a first 3-month plan only. The speed slower than 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. But I do think it is a debate. I think if you sat down and you made someone really think about it, what does Ace do better than Tre to make Ace projected higher? I think the only thing you can say is Ace is 6'10". He's younger, not significantly younger, but he is younger. And some may say that they think Ace has a higher upside, but I think that is debatable.
I don't see the thing about the upside is I feel like part of upside is passing, and he doesn't pass. Like he doesn't show any signs of being a playmaker, and
maybe the defense because he has shown that he's a weak side shot blocker. You know, if he's best case scenario, he's a 6'10", 3'4", but he has the mobility and the mindset, then maybe he can defend all over the floor. So maybe that is a reason why someone could see the upside.
I get that. I just feel like with Tre, speaking in terms of offense, like he's far more creative, and he isn't locked into one particular shot. Like Ace is gonna face up, two dribble pull up, no matter where he's at on the court. And like Tre will dance and shoot threes. Again, I saw in the game against UConn, they put a smaller defender on him, somebody who could try to keep it and stay in front of him, and he was posting him up. And like I said, once the slashing gets there, like full time, he's going to be extremely tough.
Yeah, Ace's reluctancy to shoot threes is kind of
It's
mind-boggling
terrible,
to
man.
me.
How do you take 16 shots and only one of them is a three? Like that's a big concern to me. And again,
I
he's had,
mean,
like, I believe, 4 game on the season, but I think some of that was powered by a game where he shot 10.
it's interesting simply because you have the people that say, man, I hate this new basketball where all guys do is shoot threes. And then you have a player like Ace who, I mean, he's attempting 4 threes per game, but he, I mean, you want the volume to be higher considering how good of a shooter he is. But that just shows the difference between him and Tre. Tre is shooting 3 more threes per game, and he's at a much more efficient clip. Well, not much more, but he's at a more efficient clip. Ace is at 36% from 3, which you'll take
You'll
that.
take that. That's good, but that just means you shoot more threes.
Yeah. All right, let's switch to his teammate Dylan Harper. Dylan kind of like got off to a slow start in the Ohio
Yes.
State game. He got it going later on. But what are your thoughts on Dylan's performance?
Yeah, you could tell teams, I mean, it's conference play, right? So Ohio State, they did a good job of loading up, tilting the entire defense to him and saying, hey, if shoot, he has the ball in his hands, all eyes are on him. And it doesn't help Ace doesn't shoot threes or didn't shoot any. In that, Dirkak is shaky 3-point shooter at best. So the teams, they loaded up. But Dylan Harper, he was 3 for 7 from 3. And he hit a couple pull-up threes off the dribble, which are good signs. He got to the basket. I thought he played pretty well. Again, they were down. He had a terrible first half. He picked it up. They did make a little run in the second half, but he was good. And again, if that is a 18, 3 and 4, if that is a okay game, like you absolutely take that. I absolutely think he's going to be the second pick in the draft at worst. Big fan of his. He split pick and roll, I believe, twice in that game against Ohio State. Like, he's the goods, man.
Yeah, he finished with 18 points, 6 of 13 from the floor, 3 of 7 from 3. Only got to the foul line 3 times. So, like,
Only 3 times. That's crazy, right?
well, for him, I mean, that's only because he had a stretch where he shot 30 free throws in 2 games. And
Yeah.
so the game against Ohio State for Harper was he had to score in different ways because
Yes.
the games where he had like the 37 and 36-point game, he didn't really do much damage from behind the arc. I mean, he was in those 2 games, he made 2 threes, but he shot 30 free throws. In this game, he shot 3 free throws, but he made 3 threes. In the last 2 games, I mean, the game against A&M, he was only 6 of 20 from the floor, but he had 18 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and only got to the line 4 times, which is still good, but it's a significant drop compared to the 16 he shot before. And so you mentioned that teams are starting to defend him differently. How do you think that's going to impact him the rest of the season?
Well, I think he's going to have to, even though teams are going to lock in, load up, zone up on him when he does have the ball because he's really tough off the dribble and he's hard to keep out the paint. Him and Ace have to like get some kind of 2-man game where if I'm Dylan Harper and I'm left-handed, even though he does drive right a lot, if I'm left-handed, I feel like Ace has to be on my strong side, and Ace has to be a willing 3-point shooter because in that way, you know what I'm saying, when the defense does load up on me, I know that corner guy can't help, and we know that Dylan is slithery, even though he's a big body guard, he can find his way into spaces. He just needs to just read the defense. And like I said, the shots that he did hit, a couple of those threes were off the dribble threes. You got to be willing. You got to take those shots because, the scouting report is out. You put on the show over Thanksgiving break. We're not just going to let you get free reign to the basket anymore. Not these good teams, no.
I mean, on one hand, it looked like they were starting to figure things out as far as Ace and Dylan. And then the Ohio State game looked like they weren't on the same page. But I definitely think they need to run more pick and pops. I think
Yeah.
if they ran like to me, that should be the first play of the game. Run a set where it's a pick and pop. And if first of all, do you think Dylan can make that pass where like he gets the pop at the top of the key, it's a flat screen? You think he's making that hook pass?
Yeah, I think he can. I mean, he's 6'6". I think he's a good passer. I think his vision has improved as the season has come along. I think he can make the pass. It's just a matter of they run a lot of isolation. And then even with that Ohio State team, they were fresh off getting smacked by Maryland. Like they weren't going to get embarrassed twice in a row. No way. Like, and it was good for them that they played a team with two NBA players on it because you didn't have to worry about, those guys not getting up for the game. So yeah, they just got predictable. And, college basketball, man, the spacing is tight. Chances are half the dudes on the court can't shoot, so you can't really afford to get like predictable like they were. And it was a lot of ace in the corner. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to slander ace, it sounds like it, but like in the short corner, those isolation Bernard King plays, man, you're not going to beat me with that. And if he makes those, I'm like, hey, I'm telling my guys, hey, man, good defense. Because those are like tough shots.
Yeah. No, there's somebody left a comment. They think that you are an Ace Bailey hater. I do think like there's a slant. There's a slant.
Listen,
towards
hold on real quick, Ralph.
Ace.
When he was hooping against, it was A&M, right? When he was hooping
Yeah.
against A&M, I was like, yo, that was the best game I've ever seen him play. He was getting to the rack. He was mixing up his shot selection. But he went back to like high school ace that last game against Ohio State, man. I just feel like I'm a straight shooter, man. I'm not a hater, man. I wish
You give credit
millions on all these kids.
Yeah, credit. We give credit where credit is due. I just think like because we put out so much content that you're going to get natural reactions from us all the time.
Yeah.
Like if we did one once a week, or even I guess with some guys we don't talk about them enough to where you're not going to get as many different opinions, but that's just part of the game. All right, up next we're going to talk about Cooper Flagg, who had another good showing against Louisville. We're also going to talk about Derik Queen and Thomas Sorber. But before we get into the last segment, let's talk about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action on FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book. And right now, new customers can bet $5. You can get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, so much more. And it is on the same page where you place your bets. So just visit fanduel.com to join today. And you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Check it out, fanduel.com. All right, last segment. Try to squeeze 3 guys in here. All right, Cooper Flagg. Cooper had a Cooper Flagg type performance. I think if you are a person that thinks that he's been overhyped, I feel like there's some flaws that you can pick from this game. And if you're a Cooper Flagg apologist or believer, you can say that he looked like the #1 pick. 20 points, 12 rebounds, was 8 of 17 from the floor. You know what's crazy is there was a lot of chatter, and we're not going to make this a whole Con Knueppel segment, but there was a lot of chatter that Con Knueppel could possibly be Duke's leading scorer. I wrote about it, and this was at the beginning of the season. I wrote about it. I've had scouts that were at some of the practices tell me that is not the case. Cooper Flagg is by far Duke's best offensive player. Now, everybody knew that Flagg was their best player, but there were some concerns that, maybe Knueppel was going to – I think some people thought he was going to have this Reed Shepherd type year. I do think, that played a part in it. But there's no comparison. Flagg is Duke's best offensive player. And I still think that some of Flagg's difficulties in scoring are because Duke doesn't have a point guard. Like, he's not getting someone setting him up for easy looks. I'll say it now. I'll say it again. I think Flagg as the roll man with a good point guard would probably be one of the most dangerous plays, especially with shooting around him. Flagg has had to create a lot of shots on his own, and I don't think that's his greatest strength right now, but he's been pretty good at it despite it not being his greatest strength. So I think that this was a solid performance, and he was in foul trouble.
And man, this is how you know I'm not a Cooper Flag hater, or I'm not a hater in general. Just I'd give you my honest opinion. He had a ugly, terrible, good game, Ralph. Like he had 20 and 12, and he made some plays where he got to the basket, but it was pure bully ball tonight. And I get it, man. You got to just get it how you live. Sometimes it's not about it being pretty. It's about getting the job done. They won on the road, but this was not a pretty game. You texted me, you don't think he can play the three. I think eventually he's going to play the three, but tonight he showed you no three anything. It was all four, man. And
He's a four.
listen, Rob, the pull up jumpers. I got other stuff to talk about, man. Flagg was a forward tonight. He got the job done. It wasn't pretty. It didn't help my agenda, but I'm okay. 20 and 12. Flagg he's a good basketball player, and like his baseline is extremely high because he's gonna give you plays where like he had the layup, he missed the layup, got a tip dunk. Like how often do we see that?
Yeah.
Like we don't see that. Before we move on to these other guys, two Dookies. I wasn't very high on Con Kneppel. He is struggling against Power 6, Power 5 teams. He's not even making open threes.
Another struggle fest tonight.
Huh?
Another struggle fest tonight. 12 points, 4 of 12 from the floor. But he did have 6 assists, but he was 2 of 9 from 3.
But you know what? He did make a big three off the dribble. He caught, I believe, it was a Nate Waterman off the bounce. That was a good play. But he has struggled again in these bigger games. And I didn't have him in my top 15. I think I had him at 19 or 20. And I think that's just about where he is because he can shoot, but you know, when the athleticism steps up, he kind of disappears. Common Malawach played 11 minutes.
Yeah. No, I mean Malik Brown has put work on his block.
Yeah. And I have Malawach high. I talked about this with Leaf over the summer. I think that because Malawach is raw, he could lose minutes, and it looks like it's starting to happen. And I'm wondering how much is that going to affect his draft stock, because what are we basing it off of? The 4 minutes he plays at the beginning of each half? And again, I know he played well in the summer, but yeah, man, I need to go back and look and see what is he doing against some of these top ranked teams, because if we beating up Wofford and Army and whoever else, like what are we really doing? Again, I get it. We're still projecting he's young, but I want to see more from him.
Yeah, I mean, I knew he would be drafted based off of upside and potential. You have an article coming out, shameless plug here, NBABigBoard.com. By the time you listen to this podcast, it will be out. But I interviewed several NBA scouts, and they talked about, basically they were talking about their biggest surprises of this year, whether it was good or bad. And one of the surprises was Malawach losing minutes early. And I had a scout tell me, I was like, I think it's 50-50. I think there's a 50% chance he is a bust, and I think it's a 50% chance he's a starter. But he was like, I think there's a very high probability that he could be a bust. And then as far as Khan, he mentioned that he knows he's not shooting the ball well, but he's like, because he has like such a clean like background as far as intel, the work ethic, he thinks that the shot is going to come along, but he's like, he said, I just don't like how he moves. Like he just didn't think that moved well enough to be a lottery pick.
I agree.
All right, let's talk about Derik Queen. So I want to tease the article a little bit, but I want you to like obviously go ahead and subscribe if you're listening. But I had a scout tell me about Derik Queen. He said that Derik Queen was his biggest surprise. He said, but the NBA teams are probably going to blow it because Derik Queen, everything that he's going to do during the season they are going to overlook it at the combine when he has a 23-inch vert, 13% body fat.
Listen, right, I get it, but guess what? Guess what Jokic just did? And I'm not saying Jokic. Jokic just scored 100 points.
But that was his thing, though. He said Draymond and Jokic are two guys that NBA teams passed up because they weren't jumping out the gym and they were fat.
Listen, I don't care. I care more about your stamina than your body fat because Jokic, I think he was on men's health at one point, but guess who has the most minutes played in an NBA playoff game? Jokic. He played 65 minutes straight against Portland 5-6 years ago in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Queen isn't Jokic, but he is cold at basketball. And, I don't know, maybe the shirt thing makes you think that he's a little huskier than what you would want him to be. But against Purdue, Ralph, he was cold. He was the best player on the floor. That was a hostile environment. He had 26 and 12. He's hitting threes, right? His IQ is so high. Somebody tried to bully him on the block. He yanked the chair, and it's one thing. It's one thing to just pull the chair. He pulled the chair and then slapped dude's shot off the glass. He's giving you work on the elbow. He gives you work on the block. He can face up at the 3-point line. He is cold. Like I don't get why people are overthinking it.
I just think some people wonder about his role on the defensive end. I've had some scouts tell me we haven't seen him in good shape yet. They feel like he's in shape now. I actually had a scout tell me this was funny. He was like, he doesn't want him to keep wearing these t-shirts because he said like he knew that he basically said he was a fat boy when he watched him last year. No body shaming here. If you are, don't take that personal. This is what a scout told me. And so he was like, yeah, there was a play where he got poked in the eye and he had to come off the bench. And he he wiped his eye with his jersey. And he was like, I wanted to see if he had a gut, but he got the t-shirt underneath.
Maybe that's helping him lose weight, man, with the extra layers, man.
But yeah, I mean, I think there are some teams that are concerned. I mean, there's always going to be concerns with that body type and just kind of concerns about how it impacts him on the defensive end. But even like people that have those concerns can't help but notice his production.
Listen, active hands. And you know what I was thinking? Okay, is he a shot? This is what is stopping me from putting Queen in the top 5. I want to see him defend on the perimeter because they have him playing drop. Now, I don't know if he'll get an opportunity to defend on the perimeter in college on a switch because that's not their scheme. But let him give me like 3 games of him on the perimeter and let him keep some people in front of him, man. I might just go crazy on the next podcast because like his block percentage, steal percentage, all of that stuff. And I'm not saying these guys, but Draymond, Al Horford, who probably had the same measurements, and little Husky boys, no disrespect to the Husky people, but like they are not great shot. I mean, Draymond's like the best defender ever, but they get steals, they get blocks. Jokic, he gets steals, he gets blocks. He's 7 feet when it matters. He's 7 feet in pick and roll, stealing passes. So listen, man, Queen is cold, man. He's the most he is entertaining too.
All right, real quick, Thomas Sorber, a guy I wrote about him. I want to say it was after the first week of the season. We haven't talked about him enough on this podcast, but we will. He's averaging 15 points, 8 rebounds, a little under 3 assists per game.
He can pass.
But he's also getting blocks and steals and can pass. Thoughts on Sorber?
He can pass. Like, for real. He threw a no-look pass against West Virginia whenever they played. That was nice. But I like him, and he stretches the floor too. So, like, that's why I'm thinking, like, okay, you say there's a 50-50 chance of Malawach busting, whatever. Sorber looks like a 10-year vet. Huh?
Way more polished.
He's way more polished. He's not that old. He's going to stretch the floor. He can play with his back to the basket. He can pass. Like, I like him a lot. he's somebody that I had on the outside of the top 20 in my big board, but I'm definitely going to move him up. Even in the game against West Virginia, he was in foul trouble, but like you can tell that when he was on the court, like he affected the game.
You think he can play a role in the NBA as a low usage big, or do you think he's going to need touches?
I think he'd be a low usage big because he shows you the ability to pass and stretch the floor. And again, he's not as like dynamic as Queen on the box, but I think that if somebody wanted to switch, he could punish somebody on a switch. But I think he'll be able to pick and pop for sure. And then like if you pair him with a point guard that's going to get doubled, well, he's proven that he can pass. So I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, no, he's been probably one of the biggest surprises, if not the biggest. I mean, there are some guards that weren't on draft boards, whether it's like LeBaron Filon or Jeremiah Fears or Josan Sanin. There are some guards that have played themselves in at least in the first round conversations. But Sorber wasn't a guy that people were talking about coming into this season. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Once again, thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Check out the Locked On newsletter at lockedondaily.com. Once again, it's Rafael and James Barlowe, and we are out of here.